Hello and welcome to episode 81 of Nintendo Therapy, a show about the latest Nintendo news and rumors, as well as a celebration of all of the things Nintendo. My name is Kevin, and with me this week to talk about Diorama Hyrule, to talk about Switch sales, Zelda tales, and games gone off the rails is is Harrison.
Hey, what's going on? I'm here.
Oh, not a heck of a lot. I clearly have Zelda on the brain. What's been going on with you
Yeah.
this week?
Not too much. I don't have much of the small talk today, so I'll just say to start off today, um, we are recording this on August 8th, and as of today, two big indie titles released that I'm very excited about, and both are sequels. One is Cat Quest 3, and the other is SteamWorld Heist 2. I wanted to shout those out because those are two indie developers that make outstanding games that are always on sale, that span many different genres. So I encourage people to check them out, and you can always check them out when they're on sale too. I've mentioned Cat Quest is Zelda inspired. So if that sounds interesting to you, like a cute cat 2.5D platformer, I would maybe check it out. And the first two were great. So that's it. I did not play too much of my Switch this week. Been a busy summer. How about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I played a little bit. I finished Thousand Year Door, which I highly recommend. I've been putting together some thoughts on that game. I gotta say, I was actually texting Sean this week about it, and one thing we were talking about was there's this phenomenon that happens when a game is not available for a long time, like Thousand Year Door was, where it gets like elevated to this impossible to reach standard. You know what I mean? Because there's the only people talking about it are the people who are obsessed with it. There's not new people talking about it because it's not available to new people. So yeah, I think that's a phenomenon that happened with it. It was still a good game, but a lot of my playthrough was just like, this is the game people have been saying is so, mind blowing all these years. Because to me, I mean, like I said, it's a good game, but to me, it was just as good as Paper Mario on the Nintendo 64. They were equal quality, I would say. And the difference is Paper Mario on Nintendo 64 has been readily available throughout the years. It was obviously on Nintendo 64, and then it was on the Wii Virtual Console, it was on the Wii U eShop. It was very quickly added to Switch Online when the Nintendo 64 channel got added. So yeah, I think the only reason Thousand Year Door is held so far above the original Paper Mario is because it went so long being unavailable.
I have no idea. It makes me want to play it even more that you say that because um, there's no single mechanic that makes the game better.
I mean, it definitely adds to what the combat was, but I don't know if it necessarily is an improvement. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's one of those things that the changes I could take them or leave them, and I'm gonna do another Paper Mario playthrough actually to because it's on my mind right now and just like reaffirm these things for myself. But I think I might give the original the slight edge, which I gather from the fan community isn't a hot take or anything. There's definitely people who prefer the original, and those are always ranked as the top two in the series. But I think I might be a Paper Mario 64 guy. I don't know. The environment layout is a little better in the 64 version. Like the majority of environments in Thousand Year Door are just it's almost like a hallway, like you're going from screen left to screen right. You know what I'm saying? There's one entrance, one exit to the screen. And the 64 game had a lot more environments where it was set up more like Mario RPG, for example, where you'd have like two, sometimes even three exits to a single area you were in. And that just made exploring the areas feel like there was more to it. There's a lot of the structure of Thousand Year Door where you start a new chapter, you get to a new area. The new area is made up of about 7 screens, and the gameplay style is okay, you start on screen 1, you go all the way to screen 7. Screen 7 sends you back to screen 1. Screen 1 sends you to screen 6. Then you walk all the way back to screen 1. Then you go to screen 7 and finish the chapter. Like it's a lot of back and forth on these like hallways. These almost like a side-scrolling Mario game, I guess you could say.
I need to try it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. The whole game
Yeah.
isn't like that. Like there's one chapter in particular that is entirely within only like 2 screens, but they keep you, or not 2 screens exactly, but like two areas, and it keeps you invested in those 2 areas for the full chapter really well. So it's not entirely that, but it's a lot of that. And I don't know. I feel like I'm dunking on the game too. I have to keep reiterating. I did like the game. It was. I will play it again. It was definitely great. I think I was expecting a little more given its reputation over the years.
I want this podcast to just be fair, to just be like, because I'm critical and maybe overly critical sometimes of things that I really care about. So that's it, like
Yeah,
if
and
something is
sometimes I worry I come off as like a contrarian, and and I'm just like constantly saying, "Oh, this thing that you guys don't like is actually great, and this thing that you guys love is actually not that great." But it's, I try to back up what I'm saying with some actual reasons behind it.
we're trying to have nuanced conversations around something that is typically very nostalgic and has very strong fandom. So it's difficult to try and bridge that gap sometimes. Like, hey, for example, last year for the first time, I played Mario RPG. I loved it. It's not like a top 10 game for me, but I really enjoyed playing it. Do I enjoy playing it as much as you or someone who played it back in the day? No, but it's something that I really enjoy and that I can appreciate. It's difficult, but most importantly, I just want nuance whenever we meet on here. So, which Paper Mario games have you played? So you've played Paper Mario, you've played
Yep.
Thousand Year Door,
Yep.
you've played Super Paper Mario.
I played Super Paper Mario, and then I think there's only 2 in the middle, maybe 3 in the middle. I skipped 2 or 3,
Stick
and then I went to
Sticker
Origami
Star,
King. Yeah,
Sticker
there's Sticker,
Star,
Color
Color
Splash.
Splash, and then
Are those?
Origami King.
Okay, so I only missed 2 then because I skipped Sticker Star, I skipped Color Splash because they both got bad reviews. People forget that Super Paper Mario had great reviews at the time. People talk about like it's a big shift in the franchise, and it is, like, gameplay style's very different there, but it was very well reviewed, so I played that one. But then the reviews for the next 2 games were pretty much exactly how they're received now. They weren't reviewed very well, so I skipped them and went to Origami King. And I gotta say, like, I don't know, maybe I'm not a part of the Paper Mario uh maybe I'm not ingrained in the Paper Mario fandom as much as some people, so I don't see what they see, but I loved Origami King, and I don't know. It's definitely a different game. It would be hard to compare it with Thousand Year Door, but I don't think that the drop in quality in the Paper Mario series is as dramatic as some people make it seem. Like, I'm sure if I went and played Color Splash, I'd be like, this is fine too. Like, they're all great games. It's just like a bad Paper Mario game is like a 7 out of 10, which some series, their best game is a 7 out of 10. So,
Oh, just in case any listener is yelling at me right now, uh, Mario and Luigi Paper Jam is might be the other one. Because you said there might be another one you're thinking of.
oh yeah,
There
that
is
was like a
Mario and Luigi.
crossover. It was a
Right, right,
crossover, yeah.
right. There is one. I did research on Paper Mario for today. Do you know what's the best selling Paper Mario game?
Origami King, I think, right? Unless Thousand Year
Super
Door
Paper
recently overtook it.
Super Paper Mario, but
Oh,
Thousand Year Door will overtake it if you include all the sales together. But Super Paper Mario sold over 4 million, which it's on the Wii. Like, it's a little bit unfair because like there was like it was such a big
yeah, it was an
console,
early Wii release too when the Wii hype was in
Yeah,
full swing.
right. I mean, it's still a lot. I guess I don't have the I don't have the numbers total for the original Paper Mario, but Thousand Year Door will overtake it eventually. But then, I mean, I think Super Paper Mario will come out pretty soon, like next generation. I'm saying, I think we'll see Super Paper Mario. So then, I imagine like then Super Paper Mario will be the top seller again. They'll just keep uh, releasing, re-releasing. Who knows? Like I know we're getting new. I mean, we're getting a new RPG game in November, but who knows if we get a new Paper Mario game? I think that's a little undecided. Who knows?
Yeah, they're definitely going to focus in the beginning on like a platforming Mario for sure. They're probably going to. I mean, I fully believe the. I don't even know if they're rumors, but the speculation that they're going to go with an open world Mario game and the whole Bowser's Fury add-on was like an experiment to see if it worked, and it totally worked. So I would love to see a full game that plays like Bowser's Fury did. So I think that's going to be their first Mario foray, and then obviously they've been focusing on Mario RPGs a lot lately, so they'll probably within the first 3 years of the new system put one of those out. If it's a remake or a new game, who knows?
If we ever have a down week, let's deep dive Bowser's Fury. It's not a very long game
No, yeah, I would love
because
to.
it's awesome. Like it's better. I mean, it's better than the game it came with, isn't it? Like it might be debatable, but
Depends on the mood you're
that's for
in.
another.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's debatable. So
Um
okay, yeah.
so yeah, let's get into some news. We got a new Zelda trailer. We would be a horrible Nintendo podcast if we didn't address that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you had time to watch it.
I watched it. I'll start with the big picture, just saying that I'm even more excited the more I see about it. I have a lot of takeaways for you. So, what was your big takeaway?
My biggest takeaway was probably that I saw a lot of Breath of the Wild DNA in this. I watched the trailer with my wife, who has pretty much only played Breath of the Wild, and she just kept saying, "That's from my game. That's from my game." Like, there's so many not references, but like reused themes and ideas from Breath of the Wild, which I sort of knew going in that I from the last trailer we could probably expect more of that, because it just seems like both games have this philosophy of you should be able to solve puzzles multiple different ways, and it seems like it's going to be a world that's almost like open to however you want to explore it. So that's, I hope I have as much fun doing that here as I did in Breath of the Wild, because obviously I've been playing Breath of the Wild that way for like 7 years now. So hopefully it's just as fun here.
it looks like there's going to be a good option if you perhaps want to take a more linear route in this game. Like it seems like there might, as I predicted, be a quote unquote correct way to play this game or play it the way they intended it, as some people say. But it's going to be heavily, heavily reliant on exploration. I had tons of takeaways. I could go in order from what I saw in the video. A lot of it was Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. Like I think I wrote it down like 20 times. In the beginning, I think we see Molduga in the Gerudo Desert. I know that's from Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. I don't know if we see desert fish in any other games. I don't know. Like in the first trailer, we see both the Sea Zora and the River Zora, which I had to look it up. It's from Oracle of Ages. Do you have any memories about that? The,
No, I mean,
the
those were games that, I mean, Zelda series has never really been big on story. It just kind of washes over me. So I'm more here for the puzzles and the combat and collecting things, and that's what brings me to a Zelda game. So like the actual story of like this is a river Zora, this is a ocean Zora. Like to me, it's like, okay, this is this game's Zora's, got it. You know what I mean?
well, I like the Zora quite a lot. And fun fact, there are no Zora in Wind Waker. How messed up is that, man? Like the one
Yeah.
the one Zelda game that has water.
No, I
That's
think
it's,
the
it's
Zelda
about it's
art
about
book
water.
talks about the Hyrule Compendium talks about how they were planned for that game at some point, but a lot of that game got rushed. Um, like originally there were whole underwater segments that never made it in. There
Wow.
were gonna be like there was gonna be like fish hooks, almost like that episode of SpongeBob, where that was gonna be your way back up to the surface at one point. That idea was thrown around. I'm sure they never even started development on that, but that was like a concept.
So you're not too much into the Zelda story, but you know tons of trivia.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You still know more about these stories than like the average person, including me. Moving on. Uh, they call Death Mountain Elden Volcano, which is a name that's used in Skyward Sword.
Yeah, and can I sorry to interrupt again,
Yeah,
but like
go ahead.
I just want to say like I think this is more evidence that we should stop paying attention to that timeline. The timeline, it the Zelda series just references other games however it feels like. It's more, I think you could see it more like a multiverse where each Zelda game incorporates whatever previous Zelda history it feels like. Because for example, on that timeline, it's a split timeline, and there are references in one Zelda game to a Zelda game that's on a completely different timeline. Like that happens all the time. They all reference each other. So I don't know. I think this is just uh, more fodder for me, the Elden Volcano thing, because Skyward Sword has almost been retconned at this point, and now to
Right.
bring it back for a reference, I'm just like, can we just stop talking about the Zelda timeline? Every Zelda game incorporates references to other Zelda games, and they almost each have their own unique history, and we should just look at it that way.
Well, I like it because I was like, "Oh, Death Mountain," and then I'm like, "Wait, what's Elden Volcano?" And then I have to like go to my computer and look it up. And
Hmm.
oh, Elden Volcano is Skyward Sword. Okay. Um, but yeah, like this the Skyward Sword, we assume it like people assume is like the first game. Like people think it's like in the beginning, right?
Yeah,
Or am,
it's
am
at the
or am I opposite?
no,
Yeah.
it's the beginning of Skyward Sword's the first game in that like official timeline that they released, but um there's also reasons like I think people are starting to just say Breath of the Wild starts its own new timeline, whereas I'm like, yeah, every game starts its own new timeline. Um, so yeah, technically, if you're looking at the official timeline, it's the first one. They, it sounds like you haven't played it, so I'll give you a big spoiler. It's like it's basically about the creation of Hyrule. They're all living up in the sky during Skyward Sword, and then at the end of the game, the main area kind of comes crashing down to the land, and then they're like, "We will start a new kingdom," and that kingdom becomes Hyrule, which is
Right.
nothing like the history of Hyrule you see in the Breath of the Wild games.
Right. Yeah. That's the story. But I want to make sure I wasn't like in some other dimension. Again, like we start talking about dimensions and like Zelda, and then again the timelines are kind of not there or
Hmm.
non-existent. But speaking of references, we saw piranhas in the Fair Wetlands. I don't know if that's it. I don't know if it's a reference to Link's Awakening, but that's what it reminded me of. Um, Seeing those like piranhas, or not chomps, but something that reminded me of Link's Awakening there in the wetlands.
Yeah, and that also
And just
reminded me of
yeah.
Breath of the Wild world is the fact that we have wetlands. I don't think that was a biome we really had as like you'd have like a swamp in a game, but you wouldn't have it as like a whole like this is the jungle area before Breath of the Wild.
Right. I'm super excited to see all the biomes back. Um, it's also confirmed in the second trailer that there will be impacts by weather, because we saw Zelda out in the desert and she is being affected by the heat.
Ugh, I
Um,
just hope I don't have to stand somewhere and wait for rain to go away again.
we did not see rain, but I would not be surprised. Uh, there's going to be different buffs that are different, are going to be different than the Breath of the Wild games. I'm happy to see Goron's back. Yeah, just all the different NPCs, all the different characters look super cute. Very similar to how Link's Awakening was. And then I talked about just quality of life expectations and the UI. Again, repeat myself a lot. This all looks a lot like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, the quest
I,
log
like it,
especially.
yeah. Quest log especially, and it seems like on the quest log on the main quest, the first I forget what it's called, but the first quest might be the main quest, like similar to Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, like save Princess Zelda. Like that's the first big one. But also I'm expecting they might be using the D-pad to shift through your echoes or your items, because you can see Zelda opening up some kind of menu and going through and like opening up the bed echo. I'm expecting that they're going to be using the D-pad similar to how Breath of the Wild uses it when you shift through. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom, how you shift through your items.
Hmm.
So I think it's going to be like just day one straight away. It's going to be a game that we have to get used to, but it's going to be very comfortable, if that makes sense. Um, Horses are back. Horses are being featured a ton. I'm seeing like everything on Twitter I see is like Zelda with a horse. So they're they're really showing traversal a lot in these trailers. Like I think they're really trying to show that although there is going to be fast travel points, traversal is going to be quite easy and quite useful and quite simple at times. And chances are you're going to have to collect items in the meantime. Um, so there's going to be benefits of both.
Yeah, the horse really
Again,
reminded
just
me of N a little bit Lego, but, what are those Fisher Price, I think, makes them, the, like, little people? You know what I'm talking about? Those toys? Um, I think they had a horse that looked a lot like that.
the horse that they have now in Echoes of Wisdom.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's that horse, that's what that reminded me of when I first saw it. I can't think of what these toys are called, but they're like little people, I think is the name of it, and they got like a little you put them in like a little peg. They've got like a car, and they go down the ramp. They're made for like preschoolers. Just I don't know. There was a horse in the set, and it reminded me a lot of the look of this horse.
yeah. I mean, it's all very cute. That's really my only takeaway from the graphics so far is that, but yeah, horses are back, and we'll be able to summon the horses, which is also similar to the last games. Hopefully, horses are actually useful because I never used horses in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. I know I'm much different than some people in that way. I just never found it to be that useful. Anyways, we get smoothies, and
Yeah,
smoothies are
smoothies to
good,
me
right?
seem like while we constantly compare this to Breath of the Wild, smoothies seem like this game's version of cooking. Like you'd get different buffs for different smoothies and try different recipes.
I mean, are we gonna have like a meat smoothie? I'm assuming like a dubious food smoothie.
That's
Um,
probably for a top-down Zelda. They were probably trying to avoid putting too many wild animals in the game, so that was probably their compromise. It's like, well, we can put fruit in the trees, and you can make smoothies.
who doesn't like smoothies? I mean, I think everyone does. And there's they showed off multiple different shots in this trailer. They look great. Again, the UI looks very, very similar, and it seems like we're going to be doing a good amount of collecting in the overworld, and also have the options of buying from shops as well. So just the amount of options that we have, like the different gameplay options that we're going to have in this game. Again, I'm happy about it. I'm happy with the way it's looking. Um, Bind is a new ability they showed, and Bind is very similar to Ultra Hand, but it
Hmm.
is different in certain ways. Bind can move enemies, or it can move some enemies that we saw.
Yeah, when
Because
they
we
threw that
see
enemy off the cliff, it seemed a little overpowered to me, but we'll see how it shakes out in the game. But I was like, this just seems like no one would be able to touch you. But we'll see when the gameplay comes. I'm sure I'm wrong. It's just how it looks.
or perhaps you have to do something to the enemy to get them like incapacitated,
Yeah.
or perhaps I'm jumping ahead and that's like a cutscene. I don't know, but maybe there's overpowered enemies that you can't move with the bind ability. But also something really interesting is called reverse bond. So reverse bond gives Zelda the option to copy the movement of the item that it's bound to. So instead of Zelda moving the item, Zelda is moving with the item, which I thought was really like interesting. Like not an idea that I had thought of um, before. And they showed Zelda moving with, I think it's an armadillo. Like armadillos, like they roll on the ground, right? and um, and then they had like Zelda attached, binding to a spider, and the spider goes up like a wall or a cliff.
Hmm.
So it looks like there's going to be lots of different ways to traverse. Again, I think this might be an incredible speedrun game, um, just to see what people um, come up with. And then at the end, we saw a little bit of the story. I'm not sure how much story driven it's going to be. It looks like it looks like Link puts the sword, like the master sword, on the ground, and a rift opens. Link goes in, and then later on, the king saves Zelda from the rift, but then gets sucked up into it. And then for some reason, Zelda is in jail. Perhaps Zelda gets blamed for it. But that's where she meets what's the name? Try? And then they escape. And then I perhaps the story starts from there. But that's all that I had from the story. What else? Anything else?
No, those are all my thoughts so far. I mean, I'm glad they have the waypoints because I'm lazy. That's something we didn't touch on, is you'll be able to warp around the world. So I'm glad they have those. Um, but yeah, other than that, it's a lot of like wait and see. Like I've got it pre-ordered. I'll definitely be buying this day one. So we'll see what how it shakes out. I think it's going to be just as enjoyable as the Link's Awakening remake was, if not maybe more so. And that's meant in a good way.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it, which is how I started. What I keep saying, I keep saying it. But anyways, my last part is that um, I just hope anyone like you, Kevin, anyone that was waiting for a more traditional Zelda game will at least give this game a shot and not jump to any conclusions about this is just a 2D Tears of the Kingdom. Because I'm a bit worried that people are going to do that because that's just how people are nowadays. They're just reactionary. I hope people try it. I'm not jumping to any conclusions yet, you know, like I'm assuming that I'm going to like it, but I hope that whoever has been waiting for a traditional Zelda will at least try it out and understand that some things have to change. Like you can't just have the same Zelda game you had in the past. That's it.
Hmm.
um, I had no other news items, but I did put down a lot of news outlets were talking about um, this first quarter of 2025 in comparison to the same time last year. The sales for Nintendo are down almost 50%. Um, Now, I saw a lot of news outlets jump on this because one, there's not that much going on right now. And two, it makes a good headline. But I I jumped into Nintendo always releases these very detailed like sales reports, and they're always take it in the lens of Nintendo giving it to investors. It's always more on the positive side. But if you look year to year, Nintendo has been on a pretty steady decline since I'd say 2022, 2021. Um, it's been pretty steady. So if you look year to year, it's not that bad. But if you take 50% decrease over last year, it makes a much better headline. So I understand why people lead with that. I just wish there was a bit more context because you don't get the full picture just hearing the headline. They also had details on Paper Mario. Thousand Year Door has sold 1.76 million units and has been very, very steady. So I'm sure they're happy about that. Luigi's Mansion 2 has sold 1.19 million units and has also been pretty steady. I don't have any opinions on whether that's good or not.
Well, I
The
think to me,
original
the one
go
thing
ahead.
I will say about the Luigi Mansion sales is, I you know, we've said this on the podcast before, but I think it's worth hammering home. Every time Nintendo prices a game like this at $60, people on the internet ask why they do it, and they always use as an example, well, when they did Metroid Prime Remaster, it was only $40. Why can't they do that? And I think this is a perfect example of how the brand justifies the pricing, because Metroid Prime Remaster has sold about the same amount of units, and it's a much old, like, to date, and it's a much older game. Luigi's Mansion already matched its sales at $60. So Nintendo, I mean, whether it's fair or not for the content of the game is another conversation, but everyone always says why. That's the why. The reason is they know this game will sell at $60. They know they're probably only looking to get about like 3 million lifetime sales out of it. So they they might even be looking for half that, to be honest. They might determine, well, if we can get 1.5 million sales at $60, this project was a success. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to interject, is like, I also like to save money like everyone else. I also agree that some of these games may not have enough content worth $60, but as far as like value of your product, Nintendo knows what they're doing.
Sure, they know what they're doing, and for me, I'm always going to just be the consumer focus. Like
Yeah.
if it doesn't benefit us, it doesn't benefit me and you, Kevin. I don't really care. Like because Nintendo is going to make their money. I mean, again, if you look through these numbers, like their operating profit is down 70%. So you would probably assume they were a bit optimistic about this year. But even when they're down this much, they're still making tons. And also, consider what happened in fiscal year 2024. Tears of the Kingdom, Mario movie,
Hmm.
like those were the two big things that happened. Oh, speaking of which,
And both of them
this is
happened towards the
huge.
beginning of the year.
Yeah. Oh, and this is huge. And I dug deep. Listeners, if you have a good one for me, let me know. Um, Tears of the Kingdom for first party sales was almost half of the entire fiscal year. That is insane.
Especially,
Almost,
I was
yeah.
going to say, especially for the amount of hype that game had. It, it I thought I didn't realize you were going to say half of the fiscal year, but it is, but it's also seems like it's underperforming what they wanted it to, which is crazy for the amount of hype that game had. Um,
I
I mean,
I
it's
don't
still
know
sold like what, like 20 million copies already? Something. It's not a failure of a game by any means, but I think they
what
expected it to do more.
what first party game was responsible for legitimately like half of the entire first party sales of an entire year. Which
I
which
think a
game
big
in this
I think a big part of why that is look, Tears of the Kingdom, while it is a sequel to Breath of the Wild, is still its own new game, new experience. Whereas a lot of the calendar for Nintendo this year has either been remakes, re-releases, or smaller scope games like Princess Peach. Uh, so Zelda was really their only, and they said it at the time. They said this is going to be the last major release for the Switch. And at the time, people interpreted that as being, well, it's going to be the last Switch game. You remember that whole
Yeah,
series of events we lived through? Um,
yeah.
but yeah, they said this is going to be our last. I think they were trying to avoid using the word AAA title, but they were basically like, this is our last big release. And now that we're a year later, we can see what they meant by that. Is like, yeah, these are all the entire rest of the calendar was smaller releases, remakes, re-releases, and stuff on the scale of Princess Peach.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what Nintendo's expectations were, but putting these numbers in context makes me think Tears of the Kingdom did really, really, really well. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom has sold more first party games than Nintendo has overall in fiscal year 2025 so far. I mean, like it's just a lot. It's just a lot. 20 million is a lot when you compare it to the 40 million overall. So, like again, this is a game that came out in the sixth year of a system. So, um, yeah, I don't know what Nintendo thought. And again, like kind of going back, I don't know what Nintendo expects from Luigi's Mansion 2 because Dark Moon sold over 6 million copies. But if you look at Luigi's Mansion on 3DS, that did horribly. That did absolutely horribly. So, but all the rest of the games have done well. Um, so I don't know. Like we've had remakes that sell better than the originals. It's hard to say, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure
everything.
this was all in the plans for Nintendo when they planned to have smaller releases for the rest of the year. Maybe they're performing a little less than they expected, but they knew it wasn't going to be a strong year, and they know they're winding down, and they know what the plan for the Switch 2 is. We don't. That's the thing. We don't have the full picture at this point. A year from now, when we know how this all shakes out, we'll probably be thinking it made a little more sense, you know?
Yeah. And I'm sure investors are waiting on that new system. Um, I, I know we're a Nintendo podcast. I know I'm a Nintendo fan. Um, but reading through this report, I'm pretty surprised on how well they're doing for a system that is now the longest running system in the company's history. So I'm just very surprised about that. Last thing I'll say is journalists, like, try to educate your consumers. Like, I know that you need clicks and you need headlines, but like try to provide more context so that like people are not walking away going, "Oh, like this company's doing really bad," when they're not. That's all.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that brings us to the spotlight game that we've put off for a few weeks now.
Yeah.
So this week we played Amazing Hebereke, uh, released in
Heb- Heb-
1994, only in Japan.
Hebereke?
Hebereke.
I think
And
so.
yeah, I did my best. Um,
Yeah, me too.
and yeah, it's an interesting game if you've played it. I know we've talked about it for 2 weeks now that we were about to play it. So listeners, if you're a hardcore listener, you had time to follow along with us. Um, this is a game I feel like I would have loved growing up if it had a US release. I may not have understood the franchise. It might have gotten a reskin Super Mario Brothers 2 style. But it this would have sold a multi-tap for me. I remember back in the Super Nintendo days, a multi-tap is something that I wanted but didn't have any games it would have been compatible with. But I remember pre-Nintendo 64 already liking the idea of four-player multiplayer at the same time. And really the only thing I knew that used it was the Bomberman games. So yeah, this would have sold a multi-tap for me because I always, you would end up doing tournaments with your friends before four-player multiplayer because at least in my experience, I always had, if I had friends over, I didn't have just a friend over. It was usually two or more. So, um, or I was hanging out with the neighborhood kids, and in the neighborhood there would be more than one person too. So yeah, I definitely wanted an excuse to have a 4-player game, but this would have been a great use of that.
So this is the first multi-tap game we've reviewed. I thought
I
so.
think so, yeah. And
Yeah.
we should probably, I already forgot to like kind of describe the game. If you haven't played it, it's a like battle royale style fighting game with 4 players. The environment kind of changes each round. There's weather effects that affect the battle and different obstacles that come in and out. Um, it's more reminiscent to me of Smash Brothers than it is of like a Street Fighter. If you're thinking of fighting games in terms of that, it has this really cool idea where once players are defeated and they're out, they still stick around as like a blob, which is directly from the Bomberman series. Like I said a minute ago, that happens in that game too, is where you can still affect the outcome of things even after you're out of the game. So, um, yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's a Super Nintendo Smash Brothers with, I'll say, generic and forgettable characters to me, but maybe it's because I don't get the whole. I understand this is coming from a franchise I'm not familiar with. There are more games in this franchise, and they're apparently all different style games. They're not all fighting games, but fighting games, it's their make or break on their character backstory, and I don't really know anything about any of these characters. So that's my one note. If I had to give a note to this, is I feel like they could have used less generic fighters. Give us a backstory, or predict the future and give us Smash Brothers on the Super Nintendo. One or the other.
With the existence of Smash Brothers, it's hard to imagine where this game kind of exists. And Nintendo just isn't too big on fighting games anyway. And Smash Brothers has been such a big cultural phenomenon. I think it's fair to call it that. It's just it's a game that they weren't sure if it was going to work, and it worked extremely well. Uh, it's super cute. I've been saying that a lot today. I thought it's super cute. I agree. I think I would have enjoyed it more when I was younger. Um, I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had someone to play with. 'Cause I just did single player this week playing it. And it's also a game that makes me feel like I don't know anything about video games. Because apparently Amazing Hebereke is the third game of this series, and there are 7 mainline games. And the first game re-released on Switch in March of 2024, the same month this game came to Switch Online. I feel like I pay attention. I think I pay attention to like what games come out, and then like so many things I feel like just kind of slip through or I just forget about. Um, but there must have been a Japanese audience for this. I mean, there were 7 games, and only one only one of the games of the series was canceled, which I think says a lot. You know, um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it must have been much more. I get perhaps the characters or the merchandising or something was just different in Japan. That's it. Smash Bros. Vibes. Um, it seems like a fighting game for people who don't play fighting games, which is myself. It seems like a game that people can pick up pretty easily if I'm kind of going into my recommendations. And that's kind of it. I enjoyed it. I don't really have anything else in the gameplay for you. I enjoyed it. Where do you have it,
Yeah.
Kevin?
No, I also enjoyed it. I mean, that the language barrier and the fact that I'm not familiar with this series and the generic characters aside, I can totally see a world where this was something where if they translated it and released it over here, I would have grown up enjoying and playing. So I'm kind of like, if I'm placing it in the list of what would I rather play it than, I ranked it right above another fighting game that we did here, and that was just by coincidence because it actually found the spot on the list by me ranking it below F-Zero X. Because I was like, yeah, I would rather play F-Zero X, but what it ranked it above was Killer Instinct, and after putting it there, I was like, no, that works. I would rather play this than Killer Instinct. Especially if I have someone to couch co-op it with. So that's where I'm putting it. That's number 46 on my list. The new 46 bumps everything else down, I guess. And it's it's decent. That's in the top half of the list now, and it's definitely something I would recommend to anyone who's looking for a couch co-op game that wants to a couch co-op fighting game that's a little different, if you're like sick of the same old thing and you and your friends who have like a weekly gaming match or something are like, well, we've already played everything. Give this one a try. I guarantee it's worth at least one night's worth of entertainment.
I agree with everything you said, and I I would encourage Nintendo to keep putting Japanese releases on the online service. I would encourage them to try a little bit harder sometimes with the ports they put out, but that's I talk about that like every week. Anyways, it definitely belongs on the service. I put it at number 39. Um, I don't know how I got to this. I put it above Nightshade because, like, I don't know, like Nightshade, I thought is a really cool game, a very innovative game, but not one that I would play. And I put it below sort of Vermilion. It's at 39. It's like right in the middle. It's a decent game. So I think we're kind of in agreement on this one.
Yeah, and I'm looking at our email here. We don't have any new emails from listeners, but don't let that stop you all. If you want to ask us a question or just give an opinion, we'll read it here on the show. Send us an email at nintendotherapypod@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter, even though that is becoming an unnavigatable hellscape in this election season. But if you can stand Twitter, I just need to get my algorithm better, man. I only want it to show me nice things. But anyway, um,
Stay off the for you page, man. I don't even open it.
yeah,
Um,
that's a good point. That's a good move. I need to get
yeah,
on that. That's
yeah,
what
yeah,
social
yeah.
media used to be, by the way. Let me do my old man rant here for a second. Social media was at its peak when it only showed you things that were posted by people you chose to follow. That's the whole idea behind following someone. Is you're like, okay, I want to see this guy's posts, I want to see her posts, I want to see his post, I want to see their posts. That's what I want to see. When they started deciding what you see, is when it all fell apart. So that's my old man rant. I can
yeah.
remember a time
It,
where that was the whole timeline.
I mean, for me, it's like the smaller subreddits that feel like that. It kind of has that old social media feel.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, but yeah, follow the people you like. Stay off the for you page because Elon is just ruining it all. Since I stopped you, do you want to find out what we're playing?
Oh yeah, sorry. I always forget that part. All right. Let me fire
That's
up
fine.
the old randomizer here and figure out what we're playing next week. Okay, so it looks like we are playing a game that's perfect for when the outside world and your social media world is chaotic and everything's caving in on you. This is a nice, relaxing, laid back game. We're going to take a couple of rounds of Mario Golf and we're going to talk about it. So, Nintendo 64's Mario Golf. I remember this game was talked about like it was like one of the greatest Nintendo 64 games of all time at one point, and I remember just not seeing it back in the day, but over time I've grown to love this title. So we'll have a lot to talk about next week.
Yes, when we ranked our best sports game, this was number one for me.
Oh, nice.
Number one Nintendo sports game. Yep. I mean, it's there's not so many of them, but you know, it's free.
I'm actually like in a constant playthrough of this, working my way on Switch Online towards unlocking all the characters. I think I only have 2 left to do, so I'll make some more progress this week. I'm surprised they didn't put, you know how the other channels, I think, or it might just be the NES channel, will have like the special version of the game. I'm surprised they didn't do that for this, where they had like a special version with all the players already unlocked. Anyway. All right. Thank everybody for listening, and we'll talk more about that next week here on Nintendo Therapy. Bye.